welcome to Virtual Protocol Podcast.
When a massive thunderstorm rolls in or a blizzard blankets your city, you don't stand in your front yard and debate the ethics of the weather.
Right. No, you definitely don't.
Yeah, you don't hold an election to decide if the rain is allowed to fall. You just, grab an umbrella, you board up your windows, and you accept that this is an unstoppable force of nature happening to you, regardless of what you actually want.
Exactly. It just becomes an environmental reality. And really, the only variable there is your reaction to it.
And that feeling of powerlessness, that sense of inevitability, is exactly how we are constantly told to think about artificial intelligence. We're expected to treat it like a digital weather system.
Like it's just happening to us.
Right. But today, on this deep dive, we are going to challenge that entire premise. We are working from a really fascinating interview from the YouTube channel The News Agents, which features journalist and author Karen Howe. She wrote the book Empire of AI.
Yeah, and such a revealing interview.
It really is. We're going to peel back the glossy, futuristic marketing of the AI industry. And just to set the framework before we dive into the mechanics of all this, our source material today does discuss current politicians. It mentions former prime ministers like Tony Blair and, examines the policies of various global governments.
Which can get heated.
Oh, absolutely. But our mission here isn't to take a political side or weigh in on who to vote for. We are just here to impartially unpack the arguments presented in this interview and look past the smoke and mirrors of the tech industry.
In Karen Howe's core argument in this material, it fundamentally shifts the paradigm. She proposes that we need to stop looking at AI as merely like a technological evolution and start recognizing it for what it truly functions as, which is a massive, deliberate political and economic project.
A deliberate project. I love that phrasing.
Right. And the history of this industry reveals an enormous amount about its current motives. I mean, to really grasp the landscape of AI today, you have to look at the terminology itself. The phrase artificial intelligence is essentially one of the most successful marketing rebrands in modern history.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the timeline here is crucial. When we hear artificial intelligence, we naturally imagine this grand scientific inevitability, right?
Yeah, like a mathematical certainty that we were always marching toward.
Exactly. But the source material takes us back to 1956 to a specific individual named John McCarthy. He was an assistant professor at Dartmouth. And he was trying to secure funding and, rally prominent scientists for a summer study about recreating the human mind in a machine. Originally, he called this field automata studies.
Automata studies, which, to be fair, perfectly describes the actual methodology of the time. They were studying automation.
Right.
They were trying to build systems based on symbolic logic. So essentially writing millions of if-then statements to try and manually encode human knowledge into a machine. It was. But automata studies is incredibly dry.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't capture the imagination of a grant committee.
No, it failed to generate any real interest. He couldn't get the money to fund his workshop. So decades later, in a televised debate, McCarthy openly admitted that he basically invented the term artificial intelligence simply because he needed an evocative narrative to bring in dollars and talent for that summer study.
That is wild. And what's fascinating here is this original intermingling of scientific ambition with aggressive marketing and fundraising.
Yeah.
It has perpetuated all the way to the present day. I mean, for decades after that 1956 conference, the industry actually went through what researchers call several AI winters.
Because the funding dried up.
Completely.
Yeah.
Because that symbolic logic approach trying to manually teach a computer everything about the world, it just wasn't working. The grand promises of conscious machines consistently failed to materialize.
But the interview points out that everything shifted dramatically in 2012, and the catalyst wasn't, a noble quest to understand human consciousness. It was Google.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Google realizing that a completely different branch of computer science machine learning was the ultimate tool for their specific business model. Let's look at how machine learning actually works. Instead of writing rules for a computer, you feed a neural network massive amounts of raw data so the mathematical algorithms can find their own patterns.
Right.
And if you are Google, the most profitable application for pattern matching is ad targeting.
Because figuring out what a user is going to click on or what search result will keep them engaged is fundamentally just a pattern matching problem.
Exactly.
And if you have the largest data set of human behavior and the computational power to process it, you could predict those patterns better than anyone else. Google possessed an unprecedented amount of data. By 2012, the computing hardware had finally caught up, allowing them to monetize that data on a breathtaking scale.
It was huge.
Yeah, it sparked a massive commercial renaissance. but it was driven entirely by a desire to optimize ad revenue, not to unlock the secrets of the universe.
Which brings us to OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. They serve as the perfect case study for this fusion of altruistic mission and hypercapitalism because they launched as a nonprofit, right?
Right. Co-founded by Sam Altman and Elon Musk.
And their stated goal was to be a fundamental research lab that wouldn't release commercial products. They positioned themselves as the ethical counterweight to Google's corporate dominance.
And that nonprofit narrative was highly functional. I mean, it attracted top-tier researchers who genuinely wanted to advance science rather than just tweak ad-targeting algorithms for Google.
Right, but then reality set in.
Exactly. The underlying mechanics of machine learning present a brutal economic reality. Computing power is astronomically expensive. Training these modern models requires massive clusters of specialized chips.
You can't run that on donations.
You really can't. The nonprofit quickly realized they could not sustain the cost of the hardware with donations alone. So, they created a for-profit vehicle that effectively subsumed the original nonprofit structure. Elon Musk departed after a power struggle, and OpenAI transitioned into a deeply commercial entity, one that's now preparing for an IPO that could value them at $1 trillion.
$1 trillion, wow. But, a shift of that magnitude requires a powerful narrative to sustain it. We still talk about AI as if it's one monolithic, magical brain that's slowly waking up. And the source material offers a brilliant analogy to dismantle this. Karen Howe says the word AI functions exactly like the word transportation.
Oh, I love this analogy.
It's so good. You would never look at a friend and say, I'm going to take the transportation to the airport.
No, they'd think you were crazy.
Right. You would specify the tool. A car, a bus, or a train. Transportation is just a categorical concept.
And AI is exactly the same. It is a vast umbrella term for a collection of distinct, highly specific automation tools. Computer vision automates image recognition. Generative text models automate the statistical prediction of words. Chatbots automate conversational patterns.
Right.
Treating these distinct tools as a single conscious entity is dangerous because it obscures what the software is actually doing. And more importantly, it obscures who is profiting from its deployment.
Right. Once these tech giants unlocked the commercial power of these pattern-matching tools, they faced a new problem. They needed a way to justify hoarding unprecedented amounts of wealth, data, and energy without governments stepping in to regulate them. And Karen Howe argues their solution was to adopt the exact playbook of a historical empire.
An empire, yeah. And the rhetoric deployed by AI executives is a crucial part of this playbook. Leaders frequently discuss artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
Which is theoretical, right?
Exactly. It's a theoretical future software that can learn and act autonomously across any domain. But they don't discuss AGI in grounded scientific terms. They frame it using quasi-religious heaven and hell narratives.
Yeah, they position themselves as the sole architects of utopia. The narrative is basically, if you let us build this unchecked, we will cure cancer, we will reverse climate change, we will eradicate global poverty.
That's the promised heaven.
Right, and the hell is the geopolitical threat. They say if you try to slow us down with regulations, a bad actor or a rival nation will build AGI first, and they will literally destroy humanity.
It functions as the ultimate trump card against oversight. By wrapping their commercial extraction in the language of a civilizing mission, claiming they are bearing the burden of human progress, they force regulators and the public to fixate on the theoretical future magic trick.
While ignoring what's happening right now.
Exactly. It entirely distracts from the very real physical extraction happening on the ground today.
And the physical toll of this infrastructure is staggering. We use the term the cloud to describe data storage and processing, which sounds so ethereal and weightless.
Right, like it's just floating in the sky.
Yeah. But in reality, the cloud consists of massive, hyper-industrial warehouses. The interview details a project by Meta in Louisiana. Meta is currently building an AI data center that is nearly 400 times the footprint of the original data center they built for Facebook.
400 times. That is
massive.
And the scale of the energy consumption requires some explanation here. Traditional computing, like fetching a web page or sending an email, is mostly retrieval. It requires very little power.
Right.
Generative AI, however, requires inference. Every time a user generates an image or asks a chatbot a question, the specialized chips have to mathematically calculate the output from scratch, referencing billions of parameters simultaneously.
Which generates a ton of heat.
An enormous amount of heat, requiring massive water cooling systems and staggering amounts of electricity. That single meta facility in Louisiana is projected to demand around 5 gigawatts of power.
5 gigawatts.
That is roughly equivalent to the average power demand of the entire city of London.
That is just incomprehensible for one facility. And it's not just about space and electricity either. This infrastructure directly impacts human communities. The source highlights a situation in Memphis, Tennessee, in a working-class black and brown community known as Boxtown. Elon Musk built a massive supercomputer facility there called Colossus.
Yeah, the Memphis project.
Right. And developing a proper regulated connection to a municipal power grid takes time. But the tech industry operates on a mandate of extreme speed. So, to bypass the wait, the company brought in 35 unlicensed methane gas turbines to power the facility.
Unlicensed.
Yep.
The environmental implications of that decision are severe. I mean, methane is significantly more potent than carbon dioxide when it comes to trapping heat in the atmosphere. The local residents literally discovered this facility was operating next to them because they started smelling what they assumed were gas leaks in their own homes.
Oh,
Thousands of tons of emissions were pumped into a local community simply because a technology company prioritized deployment speed over regulatory compliance.
it's brutal.
Yeah.
And we also have to look at the extraction of human labor. There is a persistent illusion that these models learn independently. The interview breaks down the reality of OpenAI's contractors in Kenya. These workers were paid as little as $2 an hour to manually read and filter out highly toxic content and to label data.
Because machine learning models require structured data to understand what they're looking at. A model doesn't know what constitutes a violent image or hate speech until thousands of human beings sit at screens, review that traumatic material, and manually tag it.
Right.
Without this global workforce operating at poverty wages, the magical safety guardrails these technologies would completely fail. The human cost is systematically hidden behind the clean interface of the algorithm.
But let's examine the scale of this behavior. A skeptic might look at this and say, well, isn't this just standard corporate overreach? During the 19th and 20th centuries, the massive oil tycoons, the railway barons, and later companies like Amazon all aggressively expanded. They leveraged natural resources and they exploited labor pools. What elevates this specific situation from a massive monopoly to an actual empire?
That is a great question. The distinction lies in what is being monopolized. Standard Oil controlled a physical commodity. The major AI companies are attempting to monopolize the production of knowledge itself.
Interesting.
Consider the asymmetry of talent. These tech giants bankroll the vast majority of top-tier AI researchers in the world. If the fossil fuel industry directly employed 90% of the world's climate scientists, society would never receive an objective analysis of global warming.
Yeah, by cornering the market on the expertise, they effectively insulate themselves from scrutiny.
Exactly. They control the intellectual property by scraping the internet without permission. They control the global labor force labeling the data, and they control the physical hardware. They use their monopoly on expertise to tell governments, the math is too complex, you aren't qualified to regulate us.
Right.
They operate as unaccountable sovereign entities, functioning much like the British East India Company did centuries ago, dictating terms to nations rather than submitting to their laws.
And if these companies are essentially operating as unaccountable empires, that creates an immediate collision course with actual elected governments. So why aren't regulators stepping in to set firm boundaries? According to the source, it's because politicians have totally bought into the myth of inevitability. They have internalized that weather metaphor we started with.
The interview references a recent essay by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. In it, he argues that the AI revolution will change everything, and that there is no utility in debating whether this technological shift is beneficial or harmful. He insists it is simply the thing that is happening to society.
He frames it exactly like a hurricane. But Howe argues that this specific mindset is deeply anti-democratic. If society treats AI as an unstoppable force of nature, citizens are stripped of their agency. The foundational premise of a democracy is that the public gets a say in shaping their collective future.
Right.
Absolutely.
If a handful of tech executives in San Francisco are permitted to unilaterally dictate the global economic and social future, and elected officials simply throw their hands up and declare it inevitable, the purpose of democratic elections is fundamentally undermined.
When elected representatives surrender their authority to private corporations, regulatory capture is complete. The tech empires leverage that knowledge asymmetry. By blinding politicians with dense technical jargon, they foster a sense of inadequacy among lawmakers, making them feel entirely unequipped for the task of governance.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's look at the underlying assumption in Tony Blair's essay. It's highly likely that these technologies will alter the job market and they will change how public services are delivered. So, isn't the assertion that this technology will alter society factually correct?
Well, this raises an important question. The technology absolutely has the potential for massive societal impact. The fallacy lies in assuming the manner of its integration is predetermined.
Ah, I see.
We can return to the transportation analogy. The invention of the combustion engine changed society forever, but society does not use rocket ships for a daily commute to the grocery store.
Right, because that application of the technology would be extraordinarily inefficient, dangerous to the surrounding community, and environmentally catastrophic.
Exactly. Society evaluates the tool and applies it appropriately. We choose buses, trains, or bicycles depending on the specific need and the broader societal impact. We implement traffic laws, we regulate emissions, and we fund public transit infrastructure.
So you're saying AI should be treated the same way?
The integration of AI requires that exact same targeted approach. Society must dictate which specific automation tools are adopted and for what precise purposes. Blanketing the globe in massive, energy-draining, unexplainable systems simply because a tech empire insists it is the only path forward is a failure of governance.
And when the inevitability argument fails to persuade lawmakers and the public begins demanding regulation, the AI empires deploy their geopolitical trump card. The source describes this as the "what about China" defense.
Oh, this one is classic. Silicon Valley executives argue that if democratic governments impose any domestic regulations, whether on data privacy, energy consumption, or safety testing, it will throttle their progress, ensuring that Chinese AI companies will dominate the global market and dictate the future of the technology.
The source points out the profound irony of this tactic, though. American tech companies utilized this exact same defense during the rapid expansion of the social media era in the 2010s. They explicitly told regulators to back off so they could win the global social media race, promising that unregulated American platforms would spread liberal democracy across the globe. Instead, those unregulated platforms fueled massive domestic polarization, and the most dominant, culturally influential social media app in the world ended up being TikTok.
Which is owned by a Chinese company anyway.
Exactly.
And the current strategy to counter China in the AI sector has also produced unexpected results. The U.S. government attempted to stall Chinese development through strict export controls. They effectively blocked their access to the highly specialized cutting-edge AI chips manufactured primarily by NVIDIA.
Trying to cut off the supply.
Right. The underlying assumption was that without those specific hardware components, China would be physically unable to build the massive, power-hungry data centers required to compete in the brute force scaling race.
But that's not what happened.
No, rather than conceding defeat, Chinese developers innovated around the hardware limitations. Since they could not rely on sheer scale and unlimited computing power, they were forced to focus on efficiency. They developed highly capable AI models using different architectural methods that required significantly less compute. And crucially, they made many of these highly efficient models open source, releasing the underlying code for free.
Wow. This strategic pivot completely subverted the American model of closed, monopolistic tech empires. Currently, numerous American startups and independent developers actively prefer to build their products using these highly capable, open-source Chinese models, rather than paying exorbitant licensing fees to access the closed models from OpenAI or Google.
It demonstrates that the race to the bottom, the reckless pursuit of scale that consumes the energy output of entire cities, is not the only viable method for advancing machine learning.
And the source also highlights a powerful intervention regarding how we evaluate this technology, coming from a wildly unexpected place: the Vatican. Pope Leo XIV recently released an encyclical, a major papal document focused entirely on AI, titled Magnifica Humanitas.
And the significance of the Pope's document extends far beyond theology. It offers a profound philosophical framework. The encyclical strips away the glossy commercial marketing, ignores the geopolitical fear-mongering, and evaluates artificial intelligence on a singular moral metric. It asks, does the current trajectory and application of this technology uphold human dignity?
And the Pope's conclusion is that in its current state of exploitative labor, environmental extraction, and the erosion of human agency, it does not.
No, it doesn't.
However, he argues that with deliberate collective course correction, the technology absolutely could serve humanity. It serves as a stark reminder that society is not obligated to accept the specific narrative constructed by tech executives.
It successfully shifts the global conversation. It moves the debate away from the hardware race of, who can build the biggest supercomputer, and refocuses it on the fundamental question: what are we actually trying to achieve as a society?
Which brings us to the ultimate question of application. Can everyday citizens realistically bring these trillion-dollar corporate empires to heel? Considering the massive wealth gap, the knowledge gap engineered by the industry, and the sheer political lobbying power these companies possess, it feels like an insurmountable challenge.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, history provides a very clear roadmap here. Historical empires, whether analyzing the British Empire, the monopolistic dominance of the East India Company, or the industrial titans of the Gilded Age, they all projected an aura of absolute invincibility at their peak.
Right, they all seem too big to fail.
Exactly. They all aggressively promoted the narrative that their dominance was the natural, inevitable order of the world. Yet, they were all eventually dismantled, regulated, or brought to heel when confronted with collective, organized democratic action. The distinct advantage today is that modern society does not have to invent the concepts of labor rights, environmental regulation, or antitrust laws from scratch.
That's true.
The democratic structures already exist. Society simply has to muster the political will to utilize them.
So what does this all mean? It means that artificial intelligence is not a digital weather event. It is not an unstoppable hurricane. It is a series of highly deliberate structural choices being made by a very small group of individuals seeking unprecedented profit and market control. As a consumer, as a voter, and as a thinker, you possess agency. You have a direct say in deciding which of these automation tools you accept into your workflow, your privacy, and your community.
Reclaiming the narrative from the tech empires begins with recognizing that the future is built on choices, not inevitabilities.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today that expands on Karen Howe's premise. History is packed full of powerful entities trying to convince the public that their specific, highly profitable vision of the future is the only option. Take a moment today and look around at the other supposedly inevitable conveniences in your daily life. Consider the sprawling, opaque supply chains that deliver the food to your grocery store, or the invisible algorithmic feeds that decided which news headlines you read this morning. How many of those conveniences were actually deliberate, orchestrated projects sold to you under the guise of natural progress? And more importantly, what small act of resistance, or even just genuine curiosity, might help you pull back the curtain and reclaim your agency over them today?
That's a great question to leave off on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those big questions, keep challenging the concept of the inevitable, and we will catch you next time.